Good morning. This is the Citrus County Planning and Development Commission public hearing for June 2nd, 2022. If you'd like to join us at this time, I invite you to please stand for the invocation and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Dear Lord, give us the grace to be understanding, patient, and tolerant. With these attributes, we can conduct our work in a manner which will be pleasing to Thee, our county, and its residents. In the Lord's name, amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good morning. If we could have the reading of the roll call, please.
Yes, sir. Good morning.
Good morning.
The following Planning and Development Commission members are present this morning. Robert Bass, Chair. Stacy Worthington, First Vice Chair. James Royce, Second Vice Chair. Richard Barnes. David Bramblett. Michael Facemeyer. Carol Scragg, Alternate. And School Board Representative Chuck Dixon.
Thank you. If any person decides to appeal any decision made by the Commission with respect to any matter considered at this hearing, he or she will need a record of the proceedings, and for such purpose, he or she may need to ensure that a verbatim record of the proceeding is made, which record includes testimony and evidence upon which the appeal is to be based. During public input portions of the meeting, individuals are given 3 minutes, representatives of an organization are given 5 minutes. When anyone wishing to speak comes to the podium, please complete a yellow form to hand to the recording secretary. Please print your name, address, and the number of the application for which you are speaking on the form. The yellow forms can be found at the podium by the door. If representing an organization, a letter of authorization must accompany the speaker. Comments will be limited to the topic being heard. Please state your name, spell your last name, and give your address for the tape record. At this time, it's an opportunity for anybody to come forward and address the Commission on any issues that they may wish. Anyone wish to say anything? Okay. Minutes, there are none. Staff announcements.
Yes, Mr. Chair and Board, we did have a call this morning from the applicant for CU 2204, Dr. Michael Woodburn for Acme Storage. They've had an emergency and are asking for a continuance. So we'd ask for a continuance for that application, please.
Motion.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Staff announcements, anything else?
No, thank you.
Okay. Our county attorney.
Good morning.
Good morning.
With regard to PUD-22-02, do you have any ex parte communications you need to disclose? And we'll start with Commissioner Dixon.
No, ma'am.
None.
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 Site visit. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Okay, if we could have an introduction on our first application, PUD 22-02.
Yes, sir. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you.
This request is to establish a PUD on 139 acres for a 608-unit residential subdivision. This is the aerial view of the subject property. A view of the subject property from State Road 44, looking across the commercial portion. Here we are looking east on State Road 44. We are looking west on State Road 44. Looking across State Road 44. View of the subject property from West Crystal Glen Drive. Looking south on West Crystal Glen Drive. Looking north on West Crystal Glen Drive. Looking across West Crystal Glen Drive. And this is the master plan as submitted by the applicant.
Thank you. The applicant would like to come forward.
Good morning.
Good morning.
For the record, my name is Clark Stillwell. My professional address is 320 South Highway 41, the Brandon Bank Building in Inverness, Florida. I represent the owner, applicant, Sterling Residential LLC. Members of the board, this is simply a PUD request. The last few projects we've had similarly have had other components to them. They've had comp plan amendments and LDC Atlas amendments and PUD on top of it. But this is already designated MDR, and the MDR district provides for a minimum of 4 units per acre as a matter of right without a PUD, and up to 8 units per acre with a PUD, and if you do multifamily, it requires a PUD. This particular project is on 139 acres. It is 608 units. We're going to talk about the mix of residential units. It is 4.45 units per acre, which is substantially below the authorized amount of up to 8 units per acre. The folks with me this morning that are going to assist is Mr. Gibbs, who was intimately involved in the site plan. Avis Craig is here, a professional land use planner. Avis is going to speak to plan consistency and compatibility. We have Mr. Ken Ward here as a civil engineer. He's here to answer your questions if you have any regarding stormwater drainage issues in that aspect of the project. And Eddie Ash, on behalf of the owner, is here. He can answer questions about the housing type and the developer's experience and anything along those lines. So let's move into the PowerPoint. Who's driving the bus over there?
He has a pointer too, doesn't he?
Yes.
Yeah, you can do it yourself if you want to.
No.
No? Okay. We do have the laser pointer working now if you need to point to something on the screen, but we'll let Miss Vicky do it then.
So we'll go. This is the aerial. You saw that from the county's introduction. The site is substantially outlined, and as you can see, it's substantially open pasture area. Next question. Another aerial showing the whole site. Next one. This is just a survey. It's in your backup material. This is the existing G-Flume map, and you can see the MDR district we're talking about. The GNC district that to the north, we're next to that part that says TCU. That's been GNC since 1990, and that is a commercial infill area. The commercial infill areas were established in 1990 and allowed for commercial depth greater than the standard 400 feet. And the reason it was done in 1990 was because of the proximity to 2 major intersections there. All right, let's go to the next one. This is the Ldc Atlas Map. One of the things that about this application, which will you see that MH, which means mobile home. With the approval of the PUD, the MH aspect of any land use on this project will go away. The bottom line is there'll be no mobile homes when this, if approved. Next one, please. This is a topography map. The staff report speaks about the unique topography and the elevations, which is common in the Lecanto area. We just provided it because you can see how, well, Ken can speak to it if he needs to. Let's go to the next one. A color elevation map. Next one, please. More elevations. And this is the site plan. Specific items I want to point out is the 2 connections into the Crystal Glen project were previously approved by this board and the Board of County Commissioners. The units directly abutting Crystal Glen, the existing phase 1, are limited. Avis is going to speak to that. The townhouses are in the northeast corner, and they abut up against the commercial corridor of 491. And the housing mix is to the west, generally the larger lots, and to the east, the smaller lots. Let's go to the next one. Oh, this is just the black outline of the existing zoning Ldc map. Next one, please. Okay, I want to speak to you about up in the northeast corner, East Laurel Street. And you see that little red dot, and I'm going to try and use this. That particular piece of property that's GNC is under contract to Sterling Commercial, and one of the conditions requires, on the approval of this and the development of it, that the client will complete West Laurel Street into the project. So you'll have an access off of West Laurel Street, a public road. The way that works is the developer would apply for a road right-of-way utilization agreement, provide a set of construction plans, provide a bond, and then build the road. We've reviewed the drainage permits for that area, and as part of that corner project for the racetrack, Laurel Street drainage goes into that existing drainage retention area to the north. There's a second access point to the south, and as you can see, it's a boulevard, divided boulevard, calls for signalization in the future. And it's unique in the sense that we have shown on this map a redirection of the county's existing road cut there. This arose out of a discussion with the prior county engineer, who's no longer here, where he suggested maybe it would be in the best interest he felt it was in the best interest of all to have one singular access point there. So how that will work is if this is approved and when this is developed, we go back to the Board of County Commissioners and we'll work out a similar road right-of-way utilization agreement. I'll get that down. You can see the breakdown in the site data to the right. Paul can speak to that. Let's go to the next one, please. This is the latest update, which was modified just before the the filing date for materials. You'll note on this one, we talk about passive recreation. Before it said dog park and walking area. Actually, they're similar. There's a definition in your land development code for what is passive recreation. It includes open space, biking, walking, and I assume walking dogs. So there's no real material change there. It's just a term that is defined in your land development code. Open space at this point in time is approximately 16% without the drainage retention areas and approximately 25% with the drainage retention areas. You can see there are 3 large drainage retention areas which will provide open space. The status of the open space amendment for the comp plan is final approval is hoped for on or before the end of August of this year. It goes in front of the county commission the second meeting of this month. Next one. This is the site data stuff. I'm not going to go through it. Paul can do it better than I. He knows it by heart. Next one. Here's the lot dimension standards, 40 feet, 50 in townhomes. The townhomes are in the northeast corner, the 50 feet are to the west, and the 40 feet are to the east half of the project. Note, like in all other projects we've dealt with in the Central Ridge, we asked for a area-wide ISR calculation of 65%. That's consistent with Crystal Ridge and other projects that have been approved in the Central Ridge area. Okay, next one. The only thing I would point out to you about here is footnote number 11 talks about the road network on 80-foot road right-of-way throughout, which is minor collector status. The rest of it is generally straightforward. In the northwest corner and along the Crystal Ridge boundary where there's limited number of lots abut, the staff condition calls for fencing, and we're fine with that. In fact, we're fine with all of the staff conditions. Next one. There's the townhouse area. I thought I'd provide this just for your benefit. Next one, you can see go back please, thank you. Sure. You can see West Laurel Street up there. That's the street that the developer will have to build and complete, along with the access to State Road 44. We eliminated phasing out of the project, and the reason why is basically, given the topography, that site's going to be prepared for development all at one time. You're not gonna move dirt twice. It's not economically appropriate. Next one. This is from D.R. Horton. This is their townhouse project. They're one of the contractors that are involved in this project. These are the townhomes. Next one. This is their home product. If you have any questions about what goes on what lot, Mr. Ash can answer those. And the next one. More townhome shots, thank you. Next one. And some of the 40-foot lot homes. This product, the 50-foot lot, the 40-foot lot, the 60-foot lot, is what the market currently is looking for. It provides a little bit greater density, but it also provides a price point that the market is looking for. More affordability. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that it's low income. It's just more affordable. Next one. All right, and the next one. Let's stop there. The always an issue of in these applications is compatibility and consistency with the land use plan. Avis's report is on file. It indicates how this is particularly both compatible and consistent, but I would simply say to you three basic facts. It's in the central ridge, it's in the planned service area, it meets the PUD matrix that's in our application, we outlined it, all of the standards, and it has served by central water and sewer. So it is appropriate. The MDR district was put on this property in 1990 when we adopted the plan, and it speaks to an urbanizing area. And if you look at what's going on in this area, you have the Suncoast Parkway. You have the corner development at State Road 44 and 486, the racetrack project. I can tell you that on the northeast corner, the 10.8 acres is under contract, and they will be developing that piece in the near future. You have all the development that has occurred in Crystal Glen Phase 2 or will occur, and then you have just the general increase in population and demand for housing sites in Citrus County as projected by your comp plan, 190,000 people in the next 10 years. So I think that the MDR district, as it speaks to an urbanizing area, is appropriate for this area, and I think that density of 4.4 units per acre, a mixed use of density, meets the market and is consistent with both your plan and your LDC standards. So I'm done. Any questions of me before Avis or Paul Gibbs speaks?
Any questions from staff?
Now, I heard Mr. Stillwell say you have no concerns with the revised conditions by staff based on your new site plan.
Yes, ma'am, that's fine. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions from commissioners? Thank you.
I have a question, but I'm not sure which member of your team will answer it. It's regarding the change. It looks like you've gone through several site plans here, and then there was a change down in, let's just say, abutting with Crystal Glen's 3 and 4 future development area, where you changed those from 50-foot to 40-foot lot sizes. And they're abutting 50-foot proposed in Crystal Glen, so I'm wondering about the consistency there. I don't know if that's something for Avis or yourself.
I think Paul's going to speak to that.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Good morning. My name's Paul Gibbs. I'm a land planner and landscape architect with Community Land Design in Citrus County, 1773 East Cleveland Street, Hernando, Florida. Well, if we could go to the master plan slide. That's the one I'll talk to. Okay, that works. All right. In this particular slide, everything in color is what's in our application. A previous slide had Crystal Glen phases 3 and 4 also shown. going to go over some of the highlights and some of the plan differences that you were asking about. There may be a little bit of duplication from what Clark had stated, but I know the application was probably pretty thick, so we just wanted to highlight a few items for you. The project is approximately 139 acres. It's between Crystal Glen and 491 and south of Highway 44, so it's certainly becoming a high-growth area. The site, as Clark showed on the aerial maps, it's mostly pasture. Right near the middle of the site is a pretty good cluster of large mature trees that we're planning to save as much as that as possible. We've located, in fact, in the center of the drawing, you'll see the two light green rectangles and a dark green. That's where we're placing our passive recreation and our active recreation with our pool amenity. So that, number one, our amenities will be central to the residents, but that also allows us more ability to save those trees and make it a feature of the development. And I think as a landscape architect, that was an important call, because otherwise most of the project is pasture land. We do have a variety of home sizes and types. We have the 40-foot lots. We have 287 of those. The client has told us to let you know one reason that they wanted 3 different housing product types is to serve a wider range of cost and different population. So the 40-foot lots, they'll probably start in the mid-200s, where the 50-foot lots starting in the upper 200s, and then we'll have the townhome product as well. All of the units, the 40 and 50, they all have 2-car garages, front-loaded, and the townhomes as well have single-car, 1.5-car garages. So it'll be what you're used to seeing in Crystal Glen and other adjacent areas. So we have, with the latest revised plan that was mentioned, the 2 cul-de-sacs at the south of the project were changed from 50-foot to 40-foot lots. And that brought our corrected total up to 619 total homes proposed for this project. Back to the north, where we are adjacent to what we call Crystal Glen Phase 2A, that's where the proposed fence is going to be installed along that common boundary and just south of the Faith Lutheran Church. The Land Development Code, the only requirement between like uses, like residential to residential, they don't differentiate between if you have different lot sizes, but the only requirement in the LDC is a grass strip between the uses. But in this case, we felt, since we were doing a slightly different product and something newer, that we would offer to put that 6-foot solid panel fence in those locations. All right. Back to the 40-foot lots, you'll see most of them are centrally located. We tried to go from the larger lots closer to Crystal Glen, and then the smaller lots more internal to the project, and then with the townhomes backing up to the commercial designated lands. The road network is primarily, it's really an extension of the Crystal Glen master plan, where we've continued Crystal Glen Drive from the south of the project, and it loops all the way back north, back to 44. And we are proposing a traffic signal at that location. There's a lot of steps to make that happen, but the client has had some preliminary meetings with DOT, and currently they believe that it's justified to place one there for safety reasons. And then with this Crystal Glen loop, again, like Clark said, it's an 80-foot right-of-way, and it'll have a multi-use trail on one side of it. There will be no lots directly fronting this road, so we won't have people pulling out of their driveways onto the neighborhood collector road. We'll also have the new connection to West Laurel Street, which, by the way, will enable you, if you need to go to a racetrack or something, you won't even have to get out onto the highway, the way the driveways for racetrack have been constructed. And then we'll have the proposed new shared road south of the county maintenance facility. Again, a proposed traffic signal in that location when it's warranted. Interesting, when we had our conversations with the county engineering department, they indicated they have a very difficult time turning left or right out of there with their heavy equipment, both going into the project and out. So they were very interested in working with us with what we call the new shared roadway and the potential traffic signal. Some of the project amenities I had mentioned, we have the passive park and the amenity site. They're again central to the project, easy access for all the different residences. We'll have things like a pool and a cabana and probably some other smaller scale active activities. We're not proposing things like tennis or things, because those would take up too much space and require tree removal. So we're trying to tuck it into the trees as much as possible. The active recreations just north and west of there, again, are central, trying to preserve trees. With our latest update, we label these as passive park, but the actual uses that were on the previous version of the plan will probably be the same. Trails, dog walking, dog park, the very low intense type uses. All right. The townhome area, although I think we saw it on one of the detailed enlargement concepts, they will also have their own separate recreation amenity. Toward the south of where the Crystal Glen Drive loops back north, we also have another proposed passive park at that location. So we have about 6 acres of passive parks, tree preservation areas, et cetera, to serve all the residents. I think one thing with this project that's important to understand is the open space. We have, including the passive park and open space areas, not including drainage retention, we have about 19 acres of our project is dedicated to those open spaces. So that's about 13.6% of the site with the latest plan that's on the screen. The drainage retention areas are showing approximately 14.5 acres, or another 10+% of the site. And as you are probably aware as a board, the comp plan policy to update the open space standards, which will allow including DRAs in the open space calculation, that goes before the BOCC on June 27th. So it's something that we're hoping gets approved. So I guess my point is, combining the DRAs and the open space, we're at 24% of our site, which is 33.5 acres, will not have homes. So you'll have a lot of, even though there's a lot of homes on the project, you'll have a lot of visual relief in open spaces throughout. And just as an example, where the central passive park area is, you'll see a long, skinny north-south blue area. That's a drainage area. That combined area in itself is 7 acres of open space that's contiguous. And we've got a lot of homes around them. And then we have, going south, we have another 2-acre open space area. And then at the south end of the project, combined with drainage and open space, we have over 11 acres of land that's not used for actual homes. That will be useful. And I was counting yesterday, of all the 608 units, 125 of those lots will back up directly to these open space amenity areas. So, I mean, that's going to be a real selling point. And one thing I've found in development work, those are always the lots that sell first, 'cause so no one has, people right directly in their backyard. So that's about 20% of the lots will have that option. Recent master plan updates. Those updates were primarily builder requested updates that we had to address. It had to do with their view of the phasing and wanting to have all three products available for the different construction phases that they're currently looking at. So that's why we've changed the 2 cul-de-sacs on the south to 40-foot lots. Fortunately, that's in the area where we've got 11 acres of open space and drainage as well. So they'll be kind of tucked in off to the side, but they'll be, the homes look essentially the same. They're just slightly smaller square feet, probably starting around 1,400 to 1,600 square feet. And so that brought our density up to about 4.45, which is well under what we're allowed. And we've removed the phasing from the master plan because we need the flexibility, with construction and with market and sales availability to be able to modify that quickly. And we also realigned one of the roads up near the north, near the passive park, to save some additional trees. We've started doing some preliminary engineering on some of these areas, and that was one area that we had to make minor change. Same number of lots in that area, though. We also updated the model center. It's now more to the north, closer to the 44 commercial area, and we're showing, I think, 4 or 5 model home lots there. And other than that, I mean, I think, Clark's explained it pretty well, but, if you have any questions for me, you could do it now if you'd like. And then Avis will also be speaking to some more technical planning subjects.
Any questions from staff?
No, sir, thank you.
Any questions from commissioners?
I have one.
Yes, sir.
So where you were talking about the Crystal Glen phases 1 and 2 existing area abutting what would be the 50-foot wide lots and the fencing area right there around south of Faith Lutheran,
Yes.
just because of the different products.
Yes.
The area on the new Crystal Glen 3 and 4 where we have the 50 and the 40-foot lots right there, which would be the bottom left
bottom, right.
picture right there. I'm looking at the topography map right there, and I'm just wondering, in your expert opinion, with a 50-foot wide lot and those 40-foot wide lots and the houses kind of being staggered, offset a little bit, is that going to look kind of funky to the eye? And if it does, do you think it would warrant? I'm looking at the topography, so it's sort of like a ridge right there along that little area. It slopes down to the east and it slopes down to the west, almost exactly right where that property line is, right in that area.
I'm familiar with that.
Do you think that would warrant one of those 6-foot solid fences in that area, just to kind of break up the way the houses are going to be staggered a little bit differently?
Actually, that's a good question, but we've had meetings at the engineer's office on multiple occasions in that area and others. That area south of what I'm calling the tree line, all the way south, pasture land, we're going to be doing mass grading for that. So that will take care of that. One thing that that the builder requests us to stair step the lots down the hill, but they only allow us to stair step a certain amount. So we'll have that compatibility.
Right. I was just worried about, like, if a 50-foot house is here and then there's the 40-foot houses, they're going to be kind of like staggered in the middle. You're going to have a house, and then on the other side you're going to have a house in the middle. It's just kind of I feel like it's just going to look a little, even if you're grading it, because I see it's definitely a huge grade right there. You have
Right.
a huge hole right there on both sides.
Well, grading wise, we can take care of it. Now on other projects, I've had clients specifically request that we stagger lots, whether they're the same size or different sizes. So when you're in your back lanai, you're not looking directly at someone's house. You can see between the lot lines.
Okay.
So I've had that request before.
Right.
I don't think it's going to be perceivable once it's graded out.
Okay. All right, you're the professional. That's why I asked. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
How is everybody? Thank you. For the record, my name is Avis Marie Craig, and I am a certified planner and have been since the 80s. We won't get real specific. And my address is P.O. Box 568, Lecanto, Florida, 34460. Mr. Stillwell and Mr. Gibbs did a fine job of introduction. I'll try to be responsive to what I'm hearing you talking about, as well as give you some perspectives from the planning consideration. And I'd begin by saying there is probably no more strategic site in Citrus County than that particular southwest quadrant, expanded, if you will, of 44 and 491. It was always looked at as the heart of Citrus County, the crossroads of Citrus County. And so if ever there's a place where, and rightly so, the county plans in the core of the planned service area, it's where development is to be encouraged by planning policy. And as a result, especially with the newly opened Suncoast Parkway, just a little over a mile down 44, it begins to further reinforce the importance of those road corridors and the lands which are serviced by 4-lane roads, 44 and 491. So in this case, we have a site that is situated to be able to accommodate growth, and utilities were also planned some time ago for that area. While to some eyes, this area may seem like a quiet rural area, and it has been, one has to look to the future and the needs of a growing community. And so that's why the designations were higher, medium density, on these properties transitionally behind those commercial corridors of 491 and 44. Now, just to the west is the partially developed planned residential community of Crystal Glen. You were asking the question about the interface down there at the south end. And I would say to you, number one, that is owned by the same party, and so the grading that'll be done will be done across phases 3 and 4 along with this Lecanto Preserve. And so as a result, it is really not the current Crystal Glen development that is adjoining the proposed change area to 40-foot lots. And if you think about some of our larger communities, whether it's Sugar Mill Woods, Brentwood, Terra Vista, and the original Citrus Hills in the Hartford area, you have 12 units per acre immediately adjoining single family, and it has had no adverse impact on values. You all know those areas very well, and Sugar Mill's another classic example of villa product right next door to single family, and even a 3-story condo that adjoins single family. So, you know, we have seen successful development patterns that allow the mixing, and it really is what planning would anticipate in mixed-use projects. So I would say to you that from a professional planning standpoint, any adjacency issues can be overcome. Paul mentioned the offset staggering so that lots are not looking into each other's neighbors' living areas. So Paul went over, and Clark also, the primary collector road. and that those are giving the residential an opportunity to get to commercial without ever having to get out on the main highway thoroughfares, which is a very valuable consideration and character to this project. And that the commercial lands, while not part of the PUD, they certainly have to be considered in terms of adjacency, and the owner is one and the same and will be conscientious in terms of who comes in there, and he's been talking to some very large nationals and chains that you would know. The other thing that I'd mention on the connectivity issue is that there are no, I would call them direct cut-throughs. There is the major loop that Paul described that takes you from 44 all the way through both projects back to 44, and there's one small neighborhood connector. It's immediately south of the current Crystal Glen. They have a passive park up there, and there was always a roadway planned on that south boundary, and and the lots that are slated for development in phases 3 and 4 on the north side are consistent with what is being approved next door, and that is a small connector road which will simply facilitate Crystal Glen 1 and 2 being able to easily get to the primary collector without having to run the entire loop, and be able to get more quickly, if they wish, to either the 491 entrances or the 44 entrance. So I think that's a real important factor in how the project was planned. And, you know, frankly, having watched development since the 1980s in this county, there isn't a project out there that hasn't gone through transition because the market changes. And that's what we're seeing now today, this desire for these smaller 40 to 50-foot lots that have lower maintenance associated with them. So there was already discussion about the low density, that it's almost half of what could be theoretically planned on that property. Currently designated MDR by PD, you could go to 8 units per acre. That is not what's being proposed here. And so I think there's been sensitivity to the surroundings and the neighborhood generally. So beginning with consistency, I know you have volumes on this project. I looked at your backup, and I really sympathize with you trying to sort through some of the early submittals and making sure you understood which one we were now talking about, which was a plan that was created on May 9th. Your conditions refer to it as the May 9th, which is the date that the county received it. So that is the site plan that we're talking about. And when you look at the comp plan designations, particularly the area of Crystal Glen, that's the pre-existing areas were recognized as residential mixed use as well. So it is not foreign to expect that there would have been mixed use coming forward on the properties that are now before you. And the site does back up. Clark mentioned the commercial corridor, but it always also backs up to the county maintenance facility site. And if you look at the blue on your land use maps, those are county holdings. You won't see it on this master plan, but it is on the exhibits that delineate both the comp plan, future land use map, and the Ldc Atlas. Since the Ldc Atlas virtually mirrors the comp plan, they already mentioned to you about the mobile home notation that exists, and that's just a historical carry forward from the days when in that area and further to the south, there were mobile homes. So that's why that provision was left on the vacant land. And so the PD takes care of that issue, and the potential for any mobile home development is now null and void. And it's totally replaced with compatible single-family conventional home sites and the townhome product. Now, the price points on the single-family homes range, Paul mentioned it, but in the 250 to 300,000. So that's very consistent with the existing Crystal Glen neighborhood. In the far northeastern portion of the site, that orange area, that's where the townhomes are proposed. They are significantly away from Crystal Glen. They're located adjacent to commercial. They're easily accessed from both 44 and 491. And so they epitomize compact housing, which is in very short supply and badly needed in Citrus County. You read about it in the papers almost every day. In conclusion, from a planning perspective, to approve a land use application, in particular a PUD, the following needs to be satisfied. And I've clearly explained to you and demonstrated in what was submitted in support of this application that the plan and the analysis, my report dated 2/24, document that this is consistent with the comprehensive plan and policies. I'm not going to go into each and every policy, but your staff does agree in terms of the consistency question. The Lecanto Preserve Plan meets the definition of Florida statute for compatibility, which is a condition where land uses or conditions can coexist in relative proximity to each other in a stable fashion over time, such that no use or condition is unduly negatively impacted directly or indirectly by another use or condition. And so we've gone through a very detailed site planning process, and you can see that in fact really the only place of real adjacency is 7 to 8 lots in the Crystal Glen Phase 1 project. Actually, it's Phase 2A along Glen Meadows Loop. And those 8 lots are the only ones, and that's where you were asking the question about the fence that is being proposed. So any of the smaller lots are significantly away from existing Crystal Glen. Now, market conditions clearly support the need for these types of units. Smaller lots are preferred. The project will have no adverse impact to public infrastructure. We have letters in the application to back up from utilities and all of the necessary departments that would provide services from the landfill to the water and sewer, that capacity is available. And so whether you're talking roads, water and sewer, or the 4 issues that are subject to, if you will, concurrency today, this project meets that requirement. Now, there was considerable discussion both by Clark and by Paul on the issue of open space. And this issue has come before you, and I know you were privy to the discussion on where this goes forward. To have 24 to 25% of a site set aside for purposes of active and passive recreation is certainly a very laudable accomplishment. If you were to take, and I've mentioned this before, Terra Vista's master central park area is 40 acres. And so when you're requiring, and the larger a site gets, that 20% ratio becomes very problematic. And so I'm really glad that there's discussion on this and that it will get settled over time as the open space amendment moves its way through the process. So with that said, I would respectfully ask that for your favorable recommendation on this application, PUD 2202, 2202 to the Board of County Commissioners. Too many twos. It's my professional planning opinion based upon the planning report dated February 24th, 2022, which is in your backup, that this project, Lecanto Preserve, has met the test for consistency, compatibility, and concurrency, which would allow for its approval. This is an appropriate project to infill a pocket between adjacent development according to the Citrus County plans, policies, and regulations. And I'll be glad to answer any questions if you have any.
Any questions from staff?
No, thank you.
Any questions from the commission?
I have just one.
Yes.
Ms. Craig, thank you so much. You mentioned that the properties are owned by the same owner.
Correct.
Crystal Glen and then the Lecanto
Now,
Preserve.
Crystal Glen phases 3 and 4, the
okay.
future phases.
Are there amenities planned for 3 and 4? Do you know? With what I'm wondering is, with this interconnectivity, are all of these residents going to be using this one amenity site over here in Lecanto Preserve?
You know, I'm going to look to Mr. Esch, and is it fair to say that the back phases of Crystal Glen 3 and 4 would have access to the Lecanto Preserve amenities?
Yes, that is a shared amenity.
Okay.
But also, it's important to know that Crystal Glen Phase 2, Phase 3, Phase 4 do have their own separate green areas and passive park areas.
That's true. Remember I mentioned to you where that little neighborhood collector, it's like midway between the properties, and as you transition over in the very north end of Crystal Glen phases 3 and 4, there's kind of an L-shaped block right at Crystal Glen Boulevard where the dash lining starts for phases 3 and 4. That is a passive park which Mr. Fisher already donated to the existing Crystal Glen Homeowners Association. So they do already have that centralized passive park area.
Okay, thank you.
Any
You're
other
welcome.
questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Stillwell, before you start, if you could identify who just spoke up from the audience for the tape, please.
That was Mr. Eddie Esch. That's E-S-C-H. This basically concludes the applicant's presentation. Just a couple quick points. I didn't know if I emphasized it or not, but that south entrance where the signalization on County Road 491, that is proposed to be the major entrance into this project, and it's a boulevard-type roadway. Beyond that, if you have questions of Mr. Ash or further questions, or if you have questions of Mr. Ward, the engineer, they're here to answer them.
I just have one for specificity. The May 9th site plan that was submitted, 156 townhomes, and then on the other side it says 125 townhomes. And it's both on the same submittal.
The staff report indicates 125 townhomes.
Right. And they also say a total of 608.
Previous study was 608, and it's now 619.
619. So that condition would need to be corrected then?
I
was
would
going to leave that for you guys.
It is corrected on the new conditions. The very beginning of your report, there's revised conditions and a little summary. And
Okay.
it does say 619 on that.
Understood. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think I say this a lot, and I should say it more often. The professional planning staff report that's submitted to you is legally considered entitled to great weight, and you should give it that type of evaluation. In the southeast corner, there's a total of 24 lots smaller lots that abut in that area. And the general design, what you find in residential projects is back-to-back lots, staggered lots is what you do, not back-to-back, so you can sell them. The point being, so you don't look directly in.
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you.
Not yet. Any other questions from, yes?
I have a couple questions, Mr. Stillwell. First one's the easy one. The submittal shows 18 potential temporary model homes. What will happen to those lots that build out?
They'll be converted into single-family residential type uses, or depending on the market, some of them may come in with a PUD amendment and put them into an office use, but that happens often. But generally, they go to single-family residential.
My second question has to do with the traffic signalization at the two entrances. When do we expect those to be constructed? Who pays for them? Developer or county?
First off, signalization, let's just talk about how you get there. There's a number of factors.
I
Yeah.
understand. You just don't just do it. I get
Yeah,
that.
and so it always says signalization will be installed as warranted or when warranted. And the word warranted has a very specific definition. So the cost generally is borne by the developer, in both cases 44 and otherwise, depending on what that signalization does or does not do to increase traffic capacity on 491. It may be partially what we call available for impact fee transportation credits, which would flow to the developer, but that's a detailed traffic study. And to get those, you have to show that that signal has increased the capacity of the roadway in some form or fashion. If the developer had his way, he would put it in initially, right away. But the county engineer would probably defer, reserve that judgment until, again, when it's warranted. So it's you know how we talk about price points and for houses, there's a point. There's a point where the traffic is so great, the issues and accidents are a critical part of that decision, where it's triggered. So we're in the process of doing a traffic study currently, and then as the project progresses, that study will be updated, and then it will be submitted to the county. We'll probably submit very early on to get that light installed as early as possible.
I think, especially at build out, I mean, they're going to be critical and necessary.
Build out is a given,
yes.
I think.
The, just to follow up to my question on the signalization, has there been any study to look at the regional impact of this traffic-wise? Because I can see at some point, you know, when we're all long gone, none of us are here anymore, 25 years down the road, when the people in the existing Crystal Glen are sneaking through the proposed project to get access, because someone already mentioned that the maintenance department has a hard time getting out on the Lecanto Highway currently. So
For their heavy, bigger trucks with the, slower turning movements, yes. I don't want to say, sneaking through is not the term I would use.
Well,
but the intent, that 80-foot mini collector type road that flows through this project with no lots accessing on it, that's intentionally designed so that people can get back and forth between 491 and Crystal Glen and this project.
no, and I understand that, but I would anticipate more of that happening.
You mean people
future.
off-site?
Yes.
Well, we had that phenomenon in Meadowcrest when it was first built, that people would use Meadowcrest Boulevard as a way to shortcut to 486. But the 3 stop signs that were put up kind of did away with that. So there's traffic mitigation things that you can do. I didn't point it out, but there's a cul-de-sac, not a cul-de-sac, a roundabout, small one in this particular project there. So that is a traffic mitigation device. But people will take the shortest route. I'm not going to say.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
My question was really more of an editorial comment, because the county needs to focus more on the increase in traffic that comes along with, the increase in development.
Well, I can assure you that the traffic studies for the 44 signalization will include multiple segments of 44, east and west.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
You just said to Mr. Facemeyer that the model homes are going to be maybe reconditioned into offices and stuff?
Well, I've seen that happen, okay? I just point that out. He asked me where they're gonna go.
My question is on condition number 13, says the model homes / offices are temporary and must be removed upon completion.
And then, what happens is we come in with a PUD amendment.
Okay.
Any change material to that area will come back in front of this board and the Board of County Commissioners because it's on the border and it's not an administrative type change.
Okay.
Any other questions? I have a few for you, Mr. Stillwell. I believe you made a statement earlier that the entrance on Lecanto Highway was going to be the major entrance to the
That's
site?
the signalized entrance there on the south end, yes, sir.
Looking at 44 and the fact that the Suncoast is only 1 mile away, more or less, doesn't that maybe lend itself to that might be the major entrance, seeing as population may desire to use the Suncoast versus 491 down to 98 to get to the Suncoast? Doesn't seem like that might be their major entrance instead?
Well, I think when the developer says that's the major entrance, he's talking about things like signage and emphasis on ingress and egress from the developer's standpoint. There's no doubt that that roadway going to 44 will be used by a lot of people. There's no doubt about that, but that's why it's an 80-foot right-of-way.
Okay. And if I understood you correctly, it sounds like your traffic engineer will do a complete traffic study, which includes signal warrant analysis for the 2 proposed signals to ensure that they really are warranted and that the county ultimately doesn't have unwarranted signals, which could create problems for us down the road.
The way it works is you do that study that you just mentioned. We have started it. We've submitted to the county some parameters for that study. And because of the current status of the county's engineering department, we haven't gotten back the necessary feedback to go forward with that study. And I'm not that's not the county's fault, okay? It's just a fact. And I'm sure by the end of the year, we'll be able to get those questions answered as far as the parameters of the traffic study, okay? And look, I'm not gonna sit here and tell you I'm a traffic engineer. They want basic, 2 engineers get together, they agree on the methodology, is what I'm saying, and then you do the study. I have no doubt that when the study is first done and we say that the light won't be warranted, I have no doubt initially. But at some point in time, the light, for lack of a better term, will turn on. And it deals with the number of trips, it deals with the number of accidents, and whether they're minor or major. For years, Cypress Village and Sugar Mill wanted a light on US 19, and they begged and begged and begged. And it was only after 2 or 3 severe accidents at that point did they get that light. And that's one of the major criteria. So that it's driven by traffic engineers, really, literally.
Okay. I think your site engineer is here also.
Yeah, Mr. Ward, civil.
I would like to ask him a question, please.
Sure.
Thank you.
Kenneth Ward, W-A-R-D, address is 12005 North Florida Avenue, Denellen, Florida.
Good morning, thank you. Looking at the Lecanto Preserve topo map that was submitted, there are several what appears to be natural low-lying areas that are colored in blue, which gives me the idea that these might be holding water. How are you going to work around those potential wet areas? Have they been looked at by soil scientists, or how will this all come together so that we aren't adversely impacting any wetland areas?
Well, And addressed to the map itself, they color it in blue just to identify as a low area. It's not holding water. But we're not getting around them, we're incorporating them. That's gonna be our drainage retention areas.
Looking at their location, it appears that a couple of them will not be your drainage retention areas, so I hope that you will really look at them as part of your drainage retention area, because one of them looks like the townhouses are right on top of them. So I just hope that you'll.
Well, there's gonna be a retention area, actually 2 retention areas that are connected within the townhomes area. Now, they don't have this on, obviously it's not shown on this, it's a planning map. There's gonna be a total for the Crystal Glen and the Lecanto of 10 drainage areas.
Okay. All right, thank you. Any other questions? Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're quite welcome, sir. Staff?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Joe Hockadell, Principal Planner with Land Development. I feel like I'm going to be recapping a lot of stuff. The applicants gave a very thorough presentation. So this plan unit development is to allow for single-family and multifamily dwellings on the subject property in excess of 4 dwelling units per acre, which is what's allowed in MDR. The site in its entirety is 139 acres in size. Currently, most of it is vacant and used as grazing land. You can see it's located between Homosassa Trail, State Road 44 and 491. And the property is currently MDR. It's surrounded by general commercial, Crystal Glen to the west, and the county transit to the east. So I apologize, this is an older master plan. In the PowerPoint presentation, as you're aware, the applicant resubmitted an updated master plan on May 9th, and we didn't have time to get it into our PowerPoint presentation. So this is going to be a little bit older, but for the most part, it's pretty similar. So there you can kind of see the subject property, and the applicant has indicated they're no longer doing phasing, so I'm going to skip through. We were going to talk about the phasing. Again, this is looking west on State Road 44. This is where one of the proposed access points is going to come out through the commercial area. This is a view of Laurel Street, located to the south of the daycare that the applicant is proposing to connect to. And again, you can see that it doesn't quite go up to the subject property as of yet. And this is looking at the daycare and the racetrack up at the corner of 491 and 44. This is a view of the subject property, and you can see some of the existing Crystal Glen development there on the right. So the applicant is requesting a total of 619 units. That's based on the most recent submittal. It was previously 608. They're requesting 287 40-foot wide lots, 207 50-foot wide lots, and 125 townhomes. And I believe that the discrepancy that was picked up at some point is based on, yeah, this isn't working. Oh, okay. I believe it's based on some of the townhomes fall outside of the subject area within the GNC portion. They are proposing their own setbacks, which the applicant has shown you in their PowerPoint presentation. The subject development will have an impervious surface ratio of 65%. That's going to be plat-wide, and that is increased over the 50% allowed in the medium density residential. They are going to have to require, we are requiring a type B landscape buffer where they abut commercial property. That's what the Land Development Code requires. And as far as abutting existing residential, it is a 5-foot sodded strip. The applicant has proposed a fence between the development there and the existing Crystal Glen Unit 2, Phase 2. The subject property does have access to central water and central sewer, so they do have utilities available. And they are proposing sidewalks on one side of the roadways. So here you can kind of get an idea of how it's going to fit into the overall area. Again, we did get some revisions right before the quasi date. Originally, they were phasing this application. They're no longer phasing it. The southern cul-de-sacs, which is this area down here, originally were 50-foot wide lots. Now they're 40-foot wide lots. So that increased the number of units from 608 to 619. The nature trail area that was previously, so there was a change to this area right here. This is what Mr. Gibbs was speaking to. There was a minor adjustment there. It is now passive park, although they've indicated it could still have nature trail and dog park in there. And they also have realigned the roadway there. The model home center has been, I believe originally it was located in this section right here, which is the access to 491. The most recent submittal has shown it up here in this northern portion. The park area was reduced to 24% total, including the stormwater retention areas. The density was increased from 4.37 dwelling units an acre to 4.45, which is still well within the medium density residential allowable density. Staff finds that this proposal is compatible with the surrounding area. The findings are all positive, and according to the memo that we sent, based on the revisions, we do have some revised conditions for this one.
Thank you. Any questions from staff? I'm right. Any questions from the
Joe,
commission?
I want a question. No.
Any questions?
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Just for clarification, based on what Mr. Roy's asked about condition number 13, does removed in that sentence mean physically removed? Or does that just mean like conceptually or model business use removed?
I believe what that's stating is that those are going to revert to single family once they're no longer required as offices.
That's sort of I think the wording should be changed there, because removed
Is removed.
sounds like removed, and I know from experience in Pine Ridge and Sugar Mill Woods and many of these other areas where they have model homes, the model homes aren't removed, they just revert to single family.
Right, so we can reword that and say that the office use must be removed upon completion, making it basically revert to a house. So
Right.
it was included in their totals.
Yeah,
Okay.
I knew what it meant, I just wanted to, it's just kind of, if a layman read that, it just says it should be removed. So.
The uses as a model
I get the
home.
use, but that's not what that says. It says these model homes offices are temporary and must be removed upon completion of that use. Just sounds, it's just a little wordy.
Right.
That's my grammar Nazi coming out.
Yeah, we can say the model homes / offices are temporary and the use must be removed upon completion.
Yes,
Yeah, okay.
I think that's better.
Wordsmithing, but I get it.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes.
Joe, we talk about open space in the staff report as far as, what they have and then what they would have if the comp plan changes went into effect. But they're not asking us to approve this application based on what they have now. Rather, they're waiting for that process to play out. Do we need to have that as a condition?
It'll go final end of August. I think condition number 7 addresses it. That says they have to demonstrate provision for required open space as delineated in the LDC and comp plan. And it's going to depend on when they come forward, assuming that it might be after August 30th, which is the final hearing set, and it changes, they can meet the new one. If it doesn't get adopted, they've got to meet existing.
Okay, very good.
Thank you, though.
You took the words right out of my mouth.
Great minds.
Yes. Any other questions? Just have one for you, Joe. In the application that was submitted by Attorney Stillwell, there was 5 deviations from our LDC. We're all comfortable with that?
Yes.
Okay. That's it. Any other comments or questions? Thank you. Okay. Public portion of the meeting will now be open. If there is anyone present in favor of this application who would like to speak, please come forward to the podium. As a reminder, individuals have 3 minutes to speak and organizations have 5 minutes. When speaking on this application, please address the board. If you have any documentation that you want to be entered into the record, please provide a copy to the recording secretary. Anyone would like to come forward and speak in favor of this application? Please step forward.
Expert clock person here today.
I'm Elise Gorman. I live at 1116 South Glen Meadow Loop. And I am a bit nervous, and the reason I'm here is I want you to see the face of somebody who lives there. And I raised my kids in Osceola County. They graduated from St. Cloud High School, and then we lived there. We watched everything get rubber stamped, everything grow up around us, house after house, apartment after apartment, because of Disney, of course. And then we moved to Polk County, and again, we watched it get rubber stamped, and probably in 4 years, 5,000 homes get built. And they said, well, we need this. The growth is here, and we need this. What I heard this morning is the word justified. I thought justified, and this is already planned. I know it's going to happen, but I'm tired of hearing words justified because I sat back in 2 counties and didn't go to 1 county meeting. But I decided this was my time to be here and voice my opinion. First off, he talked about open space. Well, 19 acres. He said one of those 7 acres was a drainage pond. Who's going to play in the drainage pond? Who's going to walk their dog down there? I mean, really? And the county mows those. We have them in our development. The county mows them. They come by maybe twice a year. So most of the time the grass is real thick. That's really lovely open space. Some of the other things, additional parking. In the development I live now, there's not enough of parking, but our houses are far enough apart. If somebody has a Super Bowl party, there's room to park. You take a 40-foot lot, 3 in a row, and somebody has a Super Bowl party, 3 of them in a row, that could be 30 cars. Where are they going to park? I mean, you don't even think ahead. You'll build this, you'll move out, and then you don't think about the impact of what you're doing. I've seen it. I've experienced it. A couple of the other things that were important to me were, well, the cars, the parking, the density, and the wildlife. I sit and watch turkeys. I live in this neighborhood, and I love to watch the animals in this neighborhood, but nobody cares. It's just go away. We need this. It's been planned. You can't take it away. We're going to do it. But you could push back a little bit and say, maybe we don't want this density. Maybe we want to come back and say 1/4 acres. Our lot is 0.25. Our house is 52 feet wide. You're going to build a house on 52 feet, and our house occupies 52 feet from one end to the other. So I'm just giving you an example. So I think pretty close. My 3 minutes are up. But I just wanted you to see the face of somebody who lives there, who cares about his community. And I moved here because I heard Citrus County cared about open space, cared about that. And I don't want to hear any more in this development about open space, but because I don't see it. And that's all. Thank you very much for your time.
You're welcome. Could you please fill out a yellow form that's at the door and
I
provide
will.
it to our recording secretary?
Okay.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak in favor of this application?
That was in favor?
No, I made a note.
I don't think he's going to get any.
No, they're all raised.
Yeah.
My name is Pearl Russell. I live at 3583 West Kingby Street in Lecanto. I've lived there for close on to 40 years. I'm one of the properties that is adjacent to the retention pond. I have flooded different times. 20 years ago, it was so bad in my neighbor's property that he had to bring over something and put it in the next neighbor, put water in the next neighbor's property. I am concerned for my neighbor and myself. If all of these homes are built, that there will be water on my property. That's what my concern is. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor? Yes, sir.
Good morning.
Good morning.
John O'Connor, 3835 West King B Street. I was here at last meeting and the county commission meeting also against what's happening and the growth. As all of you board members already know, I'm going to address two things here. Mr. Bromlett and Mr. Facemeyer. When the Board of County Commissioners approved just the 4.7 acres, which is right on top of the hill, at 8 homes per acre, none of that was going on to the next part of the development. I had pointed out to Mr. Stillwell at the time, very concerned with the flooding in the lower, both the lower left corner and the lower right corner, which would be the southern part of this development. And I say this because we are only the second day into hurricane season, and here by Saturday we have another storm already coming this way. I meant at Florida. The current DRA against the government center is already half full. It hasn't not drained over time. So all of us property owners against West King B, where you are correct, sir, that does all drain down to us. And I know Mr. Stillwell said at the county commissioner, we're going to be built to the DRAs are going to be built to the 100-year mark. That's not going to justify the problem of putting all of these homes on this property, all of these roofs and everything running downhill to that corner, let alone the logistics, because as all you board members know, we don't have to wait 25 years. All you have to do is try to get down to the corner when school lets out. You know that backs up, 491 backs up 3/4 of a mile when school lets out. That's right now. That's not 25 years later. And the point of a natural disaster, where are you going to put all these people? And this is just one development. We haven't even addressed this side from this building all the way down to West King B. You can look at approximately just over 11,000 feet from the four corners, or the racetrack as it's said, from the racetrack to the school. If you were to look at 11,000 feet, we could, if you gave this okay, we all could be looking at 2,500 to 3,000 homes between both developments. That's a lot of people in a small area. That's all I've got to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor? Anyone wishing to speak in favor? Anyone wishing to speak in favor? If there's anyone present opposed to this application who would like to speak, please come forward to the podium. As a reminder, individuals have 3 minutes and organizations have 5.
Good morning. I'm Paul Darty. I live at 3481 West King B Street. The two people that just spoke are my neighbors up and down the street. My concern is primarily with stormwater drainage on this property. As they've both told you, we've seen water on their properties at times just from naturally occurring events. The proposed development has 5 DRAs on it and 2 off-site DRAs. If they are engineered correctly, I'm sure they can handle this. My concern is, will they be engineered correctly? I would like to call the board's attention to a 502-page geotechnical report done in 2005 and given to Southwest Florida Water Management District by what was then called Sterling Hill LLC. They did soil borings. There are pictures in that of rock at the surface and mentions of water tables in that area. This is something I think you need to really consider as part of your process in what you're doing here. You need to make sure this gets done right. If, as it is said, this is a strategic area, it would look very bad 20 years from now if it routinely flooded. And all us folks on King B Street have to pay the price for it. It's not going to be nice. In light of the fact that the county recently leveled an impervious surface ratio tax on a goodly part of the people in this county, and it's supposed to be paying for this kind of thing, I'd like to see it done right. The drainage retention area that's going to take out the entrance to the county, I guess you'd say repo depot there, is going to be built at whose expense? The developer, the county, both? Will it be maintained by the developer, the county, or both? Will revenues be generated by this to offset its costs? There'll be a second drainage area on the plan that was previously put out, kind of north of this, north of those nice high-density townhouses, that might be considered the same way. These are off-site, not on the developer's site. I hope they can be used. I hope they will be used. But I'd like to be sure the county recoups the cost of doing these kinds of things and not just passes it on to the taxpayers. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition? Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition? Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition? Attorney Stillwell, any closing thoughts and comments?
Sure, thank you.
You're welcome.
I want to specifically focus in on the primary access road off 491 and the existing drainage retention area that's there that the county has that we just heard testimony about being half full as it exists. The site plan, originally, we felt like we would merge those two drainage retention areas together at the developer's expense, and the developer would then maintain it. But after looking at that drainage retention area in the standards that it was permitted to versus the current standards for permitting, that's not going to happen. What's going to happen, if it happens in that area, is those two drainage retention areas will be side by side but not connected, and the second drainage retention area will be maintained by the developer, and it will be developed to current standards, which are higher than when the county permitted that drainage retention area. Which leads me to, what are those standards, okay? And it's the 100-year storm event, okay? That's what you designed to. And the most fundamental concept, whether it's at common law or down at the Water Management District, when you're talking about an environmental resource permit for stormwater, is you retain on-site the historical flow that exists, because abutting property owners are entitled to their historical flow if they want it. But you're required to do that, and then you don't increase the off-site flow, and you retain on-site to that modern standard, the 100-year storm event, the drainage retention area. So the way it works, and I want to say this, the comments about where this water is going is based on the existing topography, and Mr. Ash and Mr. Ward would tell you that topography is going to materially change, and those hills are going to be leveled out, and those depression areas are going to be brought up to snuff, if you will, so that the flows are not as severe and they are retained on site. So, and what happens is you approve this, we go down to the Water Management District, we go through that whole process. It's 6-9 months worth of submittals, resubmittals, calculations, resubmittals, and then they finally approve an environmental resource permit. I'm trying to think of an event where, in recent history, where a subdivision that has been built has had a flooding issue that I could identify for you if it, with an existing ERP. And I'm at a loss. I do know that there are flooding issues for old subdivisions that were pre-1980 and pre-1985 specifically that have no drainage in them other than those culverts on the side of the road, the ditches on the side of the road. Can't correct that problem. But this one will be designed to modern standards, and it will meet that test. That is, the off-site discharge will be maintained, whatever that is, and or lessened. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we'll bring it back to the board for, I'm sorry, the public hearing has been closed. I'll bring it back to the board for comments, questions, possible action. Anyone would like to open it up?
I'll start. So, taking into consideration the staff's report, everything that we've read, all the application, I would just like to say, based on a couple of the public feedbacks, that I would sort of take exception to the term rubber stamp being said, that everything is just rubber stamped. I sort of find that offending. I apologize. I know you're just speaking your mind, but I find it offending personally as someone that reads the applications, understands them, understands the totality of the development and what's actually going on. And also, I take exception to it for the staff and for Citrus County and for the developers and everyone that has a hand in this, because nobody here is wanting to rubber stamp. And if I had you meet with some of the developers and the builders and people like Mr. Stillwell out in the hallway and speak with them and ask them if Citrus County is a rubber stamp county based on some of the counties that surround us, I'm sure the conversation would be lengthy. So what I see and what I understand from people is I get it. I see it both ways. A lot of NIMBYism, not in my backyard. We all see it. The Parkway, everything. Citrus County's growing. Florida's growing in general. 1,000 people a day moving into Florida. It's inevitable. You can't stop it. The only thing you can do is prepare for it and have smart planning. The new developments, like Mr. Stillwell just talked about, not utilizing the old DRA, that in my opinion, that's fairly conscientious of the developer, because they could probably just get away with utilizing the old DRA, save the money, add another lot or two, or however they may want to do it, but they're not. They're thinking about it the proper way. Let's alleviate what we expect and what we're seeing as some of the results of previous poor planning. So I know that when you just look at these applications as a neighbor and you don't understand it to the level that we on the planning do, or even the staff in the county do, it looks like, it's just another rubber stamp project. But there are hundreds and hundreds of hours that go into these projects that are thought about, designed, changed. They've changed the application just during the application process 2-3 times. So I also wanted to say the open space. So I've lived here in Citrus County for my entire life, probably more than most of the people that are on this board and more than the people that are in the room speaking in opposition. Citrus County by itself has over 50% open space that is either a state forest, a wildlife management area, a preserve area, a management, national wildlife refuge, whatever it may be. Citrus County is 50% not buildable as it stands today. So the open space and keeping the nature in the nature coast is there. The wildlife that we speak to, I understand it completely. We see the turkeys, we see the birds, we see them everywhere. But at the end of the day, a property like this, you have to believe in personal property rights too, and private property rights. This property, these gentlemen, the Sterling development, they could decide to sell this property tomorrow, and then another developer from South Florida comes here and decides to buy it, and they want to use the PUD, and they want to put 8 homes per acre. And the land development code and the comprehensive plan allows that. Like, that's allowable. They're asking for about half of that on a well-designed plan and development. I think that as much as the neighbors and you just say you don't want it in your backyard and you see all this open space, you sort of need to learn and understand and maybe embrace, because some of the changes that are going to happen here are going to help the situation. I think the King Bee flooding, like Mr. Stillwell just talked about, I can see the topography map. I see it. I see the depressions where Mr. Bass said that maybe water was standing in those areas. But that's where the developing and the moving of the dirt is going to utilize the DRAs and the depression areas and help alleviate some of that water that just runs downhill naturally as it is right now. So I know that was long-winded, but it was a long presentation. There was a lot of stuff said, and with that, I just wanted to let you know that I'm in favor. And it isn't because it's a rubber stamp. It's because I've had this packet for 14 days, and I've read through this information, and I understand it. And I've been on this panel for more than 6 years, and I have a little bit of an understanding, and I know and I trust and I believe in the county staff and engineering and the people that are putting this project together.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak?
Yes, please.
Yes.
You literally just took all the words out of my mouth. I think
Now
as
you
you,
know how it feels.
as you went on with your discussion, I was like, well, he's not going to say the thing about another person could say 8 homes per acre, but then you did. So I'm also in favor of this application.
Anyone else wishing to speak on this topic? Seeing none, if we have a motion, actually, I'm sorry, I have a question for our planner. They've indicated that they want a couple of entrance signs. Do we need to have anything in our final conditions regarding those entrance signs, one on 491 and one on 44?
Yeah, they'll have to meet LDC criteria. They have not asked for any deviations for that, so we're not giving them anything different
Okay.
than Land Development Code standards.
Okay, all right, thank you. With that, do we have a motion?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
the Planning and Development Commission finds application number 22-02 consistent with the Citrus County Comprehensive Plan and the Citrus County Land Development Code, and that this board recommends approval with conditions of the application to the Board of County Commissions based upon the evidence and testimony presented and the staff report and conclusions regarding this petition.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a first from Commissioner Worthington and a second from Commissioner Facemeyer. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, this has been put on the Board of County Commissioners agenda on July 12th at 5:01 p.m.
Thank you very much.
Recess, restroom.
Sure. We'll take, we'll resume at 10:45.
But they came back and it's like, and you know, as they're walking out the door, they're saying, well, no, the very first time they came, this is furniture.
You own the podium.
You ready to start?
We're ready.
All right. Mr. Facemeyer has a lot to say.
Mr. Facemeyer is not ready, I guess.
He has a lot to say. It's a story.
Michael, ready?
It was a story. I didn't want to interrupt it there.
It was a great
You want to throw it at him?
Don't pay any attention to my side.
It was all true. It was all true.
All right, this is an application initiated by staff as an amendment to the Land Development Code. Why you're seeing this is one of my, unfortunately, many and increasing duties is to testify at this code enforcement, code compliance special master hearings. Our code is sometimes not as worded as I like for those testimonies. So there's been a few times where people have been found in compliance because of the way the Land Development Code is worded, not intentionally, but worded that way. So the first change is to how we define a fence. We have a couple things here for fences. We talk about wood, picket, field fence, basket weave, planks, panels. All right, the word planks and the word panels, as well as just generally wood, has caused a problem. So you see this one right here. This was a recent code enforcement case, and the special master said, well, those are panels, so that's good enough. Obviously, this was not what we intended for a fence. There was a complaint on this. It was found to be in compliance because of the way our code is written with the lovely word panels. Another example is this one. You can't see it too close here, but then there is a zoom in. Those are Those are pallets, yes, but they're wood, and it says wood. So wood's okay, not the intent. So what staff has proposed is instead of saying wood, we say wood posts. We say taking out the words planks and panels. Now, can you still have the plastic PVC panels? Absolutely, that's listed there as PVC/plastic. That's okay, but that will take out this lovely thing and this lovely thing. So that's the intent of the fence changes. And I'm going to go through each one, but if you got a question on any of them, stop me. Yes, Ms. Worthington.
Yeah, what I'm wondering is when it says wood posts, you know, there are those things you can buy where they're constructed together, and you know the things are. It's just one. It is essentially a panel. It's, you know, as you would construct a wood fence, but it comes all in one. Will that have any effect here?
I think because we have picket and we have basket weave and we have lattice, I think any of those would probably be descriptive of that. What I was trying to get away from was this.
There's a gentleman building a fence out of pallets in my neighborhood, so
Yeah,
I appreciate this.
we want to stop that, and that's yeah, and you understand what we're trying to do. You're right. It's very hard to write. That's why I'm hoping that the words basket weave, lattice, and picket also cover what a fence is, as opposed to buying a bunch of 2x4s and slapping them up, which is also something we've seen.
So can I ask you a question? I know that the land development code, people are more and more visual these days. Nobody wants to read. So would it not just help to have photos of stuff like this that says this is not allowed? Like this kind of stuff is
right.
Because then I also can see where somebody go back to that that one. What are those panels made out of?
Those are pieces of aluminum.
Is that plastic?
No, it's aluminum.
Oh, because it looks clear to me right there. Okay.
Yeah,
Because I've seen those corrugated panels that they use for roof.
Right.
That are essentially made of plastic.
Yeah, and that's not in here, other than PVC plastic. Possibly, and it's an interpretation thing. I don't think I can write every possible fence material here.
Which is why I would ask, why can't you just put photos that says not this,
not this,
not this?
Too many photos.
I know it would be a lot of photos,
yeah.
but listen, people are going more and more visual. If you could at least be very explicit, and then pictures speak 1,000 words.
Yeah, and a good point. I think in codes it's very hard because someone will put something in there, so it's not exactly that.
Can't you say something like fences cannot be constructed out of materials unintended for that use?
Too general. The special master will not give me anything on that one. He allows me to interpret. That's my job, is to interpret the land development code. I see what you're saying. I appreciate that. I'll talk to the county attorney and see if there's some way I can do that. I can't put, not allow this, not allow this, because there probably are some ways that they can get there. This material, no, absolutely not. A bunch of pallets stacked up, absolutely not. The 2x4 slapped up against a couple posts, no. Trying to do our best, but I understand. Good points. All right, moving on. I'm going to go to section 4002 before we get to tree removal. 4002 and some of the subsequent sections are about site development plans versus site improvement plans. When the code was rewritten in 2012, the planner, who is long gone by now, intended, and I was there enough to see at the periphery what was intended, but they took it from another county. A site development plan was meant for vacant lots. When you have a vacant lot and you want to put something on that's never been there, it's a site development plan. You got to meet this, and this. Site improvement plans were supposed to be, you've already got something there and I'm going to do something else. I've got a house, I want to put a pool. That was the intent. The way it's worded, it's very poorly worded. 4002, you can see the entire strike through there. The problem with this is the following are exempt: single family dwellings. So where do you put in that you need a house permit? Obviously you need it for the Florida Building Code, but you also need a site permit. This was supposed to cover it. It wasn't supposed to have an exemption. That's why there's a lot of strike throughs here. So we're saying the site development plan was required for development on vacant land, period. You'll see in subsequent section 4003, we specified residential versus non-residential, because this also is confusing. It says if I need a site development plan, yes, but I need to show parking areas. Well, it's not supposed to be for houses, but people were getting very confused about this too. So this is trying to clarify. It's called a site development plan when it's a site plan on a vacant lot that never had anything else. It's called a site improvement plan when it's something that's been improved and I'm adding more to it. So that's what those next few sections are trying to do here. Not a lot. There is a page 6 of your strike through. I did take out the within 3 days of submitting. the Florida statutes have been revised quite a bit over the few years as to how quickly building permits have to be turned around. So rather than say 3 days here, we're going to be subject to Florida statutes. Some things it's 3 days, some days it's 5, some days it's 21. I'm sure Mr. Hawk can tell you off the top of his head. I can't, but it's changing constantly. So I'm taking out that automatic, within 3 days we'll do it. Not always. We're going to do it per Florida statutes. So that's what you're seeing on that page. And for 4100 and 4101.
Excuse me, Joanna.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Before I get into 4100.
Mm-hmm.
On page 4, item A, for residential submitted, the plan shall show all proposed physical improvements, da 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 da. What about septics and wells? Should they be included on there?
No, because the county does not review those. That is reviewed by the state of Florida.
Okay.
So on their site plan, they absolutely need them. We don't look at them or have any input on that.
Okay. And then for non-residential submittals, we mentioned the word prepared by a registered architect, landscape architect, or civil engineer licensed in the state of Florida.
Mm-hmm.
We just recently went through a debate over what license will work
Stormwater,
and what
right.
won't. We should go back and make sure that this language agrees with what we've proposed to go before the Board of County Commissioners.
Well, the difference is that they were talking about stormwater, and this is a site plan. So a landscape architect absolutely can draw site plans. Frankly, you can draw a site plan, I can draw a site plan.
Right.
So it says by their field of expertise. So I think we've covered it enough there, and it's stormwater. That would be whoever we just approved with stormwater, which is a good point. I forgot to tell y'all that the commission did adopt the waterfront stormwater standards that y'all recommended with no changes last Tuesday. So what that's done is we've pulled quite a few applications that were coming before you for variances, a lot that were continued and a few that were upcoming. So your variance load will cut back. But back to what you're talking about, I think that, bless you. For this existing language, I don't feel there's a conflict because they're certifying to their field of expertise, and it's not necessarily stormwater, this is plan drawings. But
Okay.
thank you, I appreciate that.
Yep. And that's all I had in that section.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any more going on? 4100, again, it talks about a site improvement plan. It's just a name, but it's something that we can cite for code enforcement. Either it's a vacant site or a developed site. You have to, if you're doing it on proposed improved land, you need a site improvement plan. And so you need other things with a site improvement plan.
Joanna,
Uh-huh.
for the site improvement plans, we're taking out a lot here. Site improvement plan should be required for any development. Is there an agricultural exemption on that at all, or?
There's yes and no, and I'm sorry they have to be so vague, but there is a provision through the Florida Building Code and the Right to Farm Act where you can submit to the county building department your information, and I have a right to farm, I have an ag classification, and I want exemption for a right to farm building. That's possible, and that's statutes and has nothing to do with this.
Okay.
So a site improvement plan may be required unless they go through the county, they go through the building division and get that qualification. It's not, obviously it's very confusing. So when I testify to the special master and say, well, they need a site development plan, he's like, no, they don't. It says they don't need one for houses. Yeah, they do. They need a site plan. So that's why we're trying to clarify that. It's getting us stuck in code, and that's not what we want. For 4102, it's the same. We're just continuing the improvement plans. It's very, very similar to site development plans, except we're just saying that they're actually two different entities. 4200, you'll see a strike through for approval letter. In 2012, we had concurrency and things like that, and we had approval letters for site development plans and site improvement plans. We don't have those anymore. You go through permitting. You don't get a letter. So it just says measured by the date of issuance, takes off the idea of an approval letter.
Joanne, can I ask you a question on?
Sure.
Go back to 4101.
Mm-hmm.
Says that, the review process if the development proposal, and then it just stops. Is there something that you missed?
Yeah, absolutely. That meets all of the following conditions should have remained. I think I got a little carried away with my strike-throughs.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you. This is why I'm very helpful. We have such a wide thing on this planning board. You're very, very knowledgeable, and I appreciate your inputs. All right, section 4303, although this should be obvious, when a PUD expires, you need a new PUD. So this just says when a PUD expires, you need a new PUD, because the argument is, no, I don't need a new PUD. I had one, it expired, so I do whatever I want with the property. That's not how that works. So this just makes it very obvious. When a PUD expires, you got to come back, either renew it or do a new one. All right, tree removal. I didn't have to look hard. This actually was from the last month. Here's a pre, and there's what it looks like. It's happening all over the county. I'm sure you're seeing cleared areas and nothing there. So it's very obvious in our code and in other sections of our code that you can't have tree removal on vacant property. You just can't. If you have a house, that's when your tree removal starts, or a building, some kind of approved use. This clarifies that. It takes out a lot of the provisions for me giving approval for vacant lots. I'm not. The Land Development Code says you can't do it for vacant lots. So Section D is entirely taken out. We don't do vacant lots elsewhere in the code. Section A takes out a lot of items, because don't come to me and tell me that you absolutely have to have it removed. Now, that Florida statutes are changed every year, the last couple years, about tree removal, and right now they say you can go to a certified arborist and they can certify that a tree must be removed because it's a damage to property or people on the ground. That's Florida statutes, nothing to do with the Land Development Code. That's fine, they can do that. Now, the Citrus County Builders Association, Mr. Hall had some very good points in a letter. The letter you have, I think it's on blue. And I agree with him on that. He had some good points. So in blue there is what I actually am going to try to keep based on his comments. Good point. So I'm saying that I can approve ensuring the structural integrity of buildings, that's tree removal, necessary grading work on sloping properties, and the provision of essential services. Now, I'll tell you that builders do not have to come to me and say, I'm building this house and I need to go 20 feet this way because of the grade. They just do it as part of their house permit. But this actually codifies that they can do that. If it needs to ensure the structural integrity or do grading work, we're good. So I didn't want to remove all that. Like I said, I got a little carried away. It's very frustrating going to code enforcement and then having somebody I know is not in compliance, but the wording of Land Development Code does not back me up. So that's what this language is intended, and I don't think you have any other questions. Excuse me, I'm talking too much.
We're specifically talking about tree removal only.
This is tree removal right here, and you can see
Not
except
cleaning up, not limbing, not lifting, what is it called, pruning?
Right. This is tree removal.
Okay, just want to make sure.
Right, and a tree is 4 inches in diameter or less. So we do tell people, you want to bush hog and remove those little stray things, you go. But I'm not going to give them approval on a vacant lot for 4 inches in diameter or more unless they have a permit in-house for a building or in their hand for a shop or something, then they can do it.
And then this happens everywhere. You're right. I know a lot right now.
Right.
That they went in and cleared some trees, and that's 100% not allowed without a building permit.
Without a permit for a use.
For
yes.
a use.
Right.
Or for, if you can say.
If they can say I need it for, buildings wouldn't be vacant, but necessary grading roof on sloping properties, yes, if they've,
What does that mean?
And Mr. Hall probably addressed that, but that would, what I get from that is if they're building a DRA or something next door and it's going to cave in or something, like I was at McDonald's at Walmart and they're building the Mavis next door. It's just opened. Huge slope right there. I would understand, even though it's not quite on that lot, that they're going to need to grade that to make that not cave in.
And if there was a tree located in that particular
Correct.
That's already a site development.
It is, but it might not be on that particular lot. It might be very adjacent
that might be like
to
the
it.
lot next to it.
Right.
Okay, I understand.
Right, and that's on sloping properties. And then essential services, obviously, Duke Energy Fire. Somebody has to have a tree removed. I'm not going to get in the way of that.
And then so to rectify this, it's a code compliance, right? Somebody has to submit code compliance.
Correct. And right now, the way it's worded is not great for me because you see that section B that says, sure, you can get a vacant tree property. You can't. So I have to tell the special master, I know it says that, but you can't do that. This will help quite a bit to try to do that. And special master, you can't, he usually fines by day. You can't replace the trees. The trees are gone. So he'll decide a fine completely. This will help me say, depending on the circumstances, that's 3,000, 4,000, 6,000, whatever it might be.
I'm just wondering, how do we get people to understand and know this? Because everybody, I sell real estate, and I can tell you, people think they can buy this lot, and that they can just go out there and like clear this lot.
I know, and
without a permit. Like,
right.
What are you talking about? I own this lot. I can
and we
cut
tell
trees.
everybody we possibly can.
I think it needs to be spread out there. Reporters and all.
I'm getting ready to speak to the Board of Realtors in July.
Yeah, I think people just need to let people know. More and more people are coming here, and I'm telling you, I get people calling me all the time. They want to buy a lot, and they want to come here with their RV, and they want to. That's all they want to do.
I was going to say
and
with the RV,
I tell them all,
right.
You're not allowed to do that. You can't.
Right.
You cannot do it. You can't do it. You can't do it. They're like, what? What are you talking about?
And
I said, well, you can go there
you're
and
right.
camp on it for 2-3 days
No.
at a time, self-contained.
I can't
if
even
you can
say
get
that.
away with it.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't even say that. Can't camp on it at all, and we don't allow electric permits for them.
Correct.
And
I
get every day when
It's
we're
a
planner of
problem.
the day, RVs and tree
It's a
removal are
huge
a
problem.
lot.
Lots of specimen trees are being cut down by people that don't know the rules.
Agreed, and we tell everybody we can. I mean, this is heartbreaking. Look at that beautiful site. You know, it's next to the water, for heaven's sakes. But this will help with code enforcement and help try to do that. I mean, our job is not to slap hands. We're trying to stop it from people. But when we have people that we know better, what do you do?
Yeah. Thank you.
In item A, if you go back up to, we talk about removing trees for the purpose of filling the regulatory floodplain on vacant properties, not considered a special circumstance, etc. Do we still want to put something in here about removing the trees in the floodplain? Because you could still have floodplain on your property. I don't want to see people start
This
cutting and filling in that area.
Right. This is tree removal outside of an approved construction footprint. So once you have a house, you know, you're supposed to only remove the trees for there. But then once that house is built, as a homeowner, as long as you keep the minimum number of trees on there, you can actually start removing trees. You can do so. That's the way our code's written, our tree preservation ordinance. So up front, we're not going to give you approval, but once you have that house there, I don't like that tree in my backyard. As long as you have enough trees to meet the minimum, you can cut that. And that's just the way we've worded. It was a long-fought tree preservation ordinance, but
I don't like the idea that we're saying that you can cut the trees down.
you know, like the I'm sorry.
I don't like the idea that we're saying that you can cut the trees in the floodplain.
We're not. We're taking that out. I'm taking that removing trees for the purpose of filling the regulatory floodplain is gone.
Okay,
That's a
I
strike through.
misunderstood. All right,
Yeah.
my bad.
No,
Thank
it's
you.
fine. I was going to do everything, but Mr. Hall pointed out correctly. Sometimes there's grading and essential services. Last thing I want to do is mess up Duke. Anything else? I know it's a lot, but it's really all related to code enforcement's testimony. I'm trying to clean up the code so it makes more sense to the special master.
Housekeeping issues. I read through what appears to be what would be the final document. I noticed there's some minor typos. I would like to just take this
Yes.
with.
If you can get in with Cheryl, that'd be awesome. Thank you. And Mr. Barnes already pointed out one. I appreciate that.
Yep.
Like I said, our workload is a little heavy, and I'm going to have those balls drop, but I appreciate the checking. Thank you.
No problem. Okay. Anything else? Any other comments or questions? Okay. We'll open up to the public. Anybody wishing to speak in favor? Gee, how did I know, Mr. Gaston, you're going to be here?
This is his thing right here.
My name is Gaston Hall. I'm here representing the Citrus County Building Alliance. And yes, with the addition of these words back in, we approve the entire document as submitted.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak in favor? Anyone in favor? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition? Any opposition? Any opposition? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board. Any further comments, discussion? Seeing none, can we have
I'll just say, I've said it before, I'll say it again, I love it when we fix stuff. And your workload and everything that you do, Ms. Katu, is 100% appreciated. I think you're doing an amazing job.
Thank you.
I think all the staff is doing an amazing job for us. I mean,
Yes.
they keep us, you guys keep us on our toes.
Well, your input's helpful. I appreciate it. I'm gonna make typos, darn it.
With that, Do we have a motion?
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
The Planning and Development Commission finds application number OA-22-02 consistent with the Citrus County Comprehensive Plan and Citrus County Land Development Code, and that this board recommends approval of the application to, wait, do we have to put with, you're not,
It's not
with
conditions, it would simply be
modifications?
approved, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, with the modifications as talked about, yes.
Okay,
Thank
with
you.
the modifications that we talked about
I know,
of the application
She's not here to yell at you, so we're all good.
to the Board of County Commissioners based upon the evidence and testimony presented and the staff report and conclusions regarding this petition.
Do we have a second?
Second that.
Commissioner Barnes. We have a first from Commissioner Worthington and a second from Commissioner Barnes. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay. Motion carries. All right. Let's see. We don't have any comments from our growth manager.
We do not, but I think we do do we have some comments from our school board representative?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment. I've got several questions about school concurrency in some of these projects that we've been seeing, and I just wanted to let everybody know that really the only difference between school concurrency per se and what we're doing now is that you can get a developer to donate land in a particular development if you need to have a facility in that area, which we don't need. We have land in all parts of the county with the possible exception of Cardinal Lane area. So if a developer were to provide land for a school or school board facility, they would be reimbursed through impact fee credits. So we have land, and we don't need to acquire new school sites per se in the county. So I just want to make sure that the planning commissioners were aware that we are monitoring these developments, and we have made some changes with regard to specifically the two big projects in Lecanto. We didn't anticipate those a couple of years ago, so we're making some changes for what we may plan to do with the rock crusher site, which is 104 acres. We may plan some additional improvements there in the future if we continue to see this kind of growth, but there's really not anything we would do any differently if we had school concurrency and we were requiring land contributions other than as long as we have impact fees and we can build facilities when they're needed, we don't need additional land at this time. Probably not for the next 50 years, with the possible exception of Cardinal, which I don't really think we need to create a whole situation just for that one area, but just keep that in mind that that's not an area that the school board anticipated a lot of growth. The rest of the county we've got covered. We have 104 acres in Rock Crusher. We have land in Crystal River. We have land in Citrus Springs, and we have the elementary school site in Lecanto, which would be our next school. We have land in Floral City for an addition. So we've got all the parts of the county covered with land. I just want to make you aware we are watching it though.
Great. Thank you.
And Mr. Chair, just one more thing. Your next meeting, June 16th, there's only 3, might even be 2 items now. We might have just pulled another variance, but one of them is incredibly heavy public input, so I expect there to be a nice crowd here. That is for the Meadowcrest development, so that's coming on your next meeting.
May I ask a question?
Yes.
Before we conclude? Joanna, when you mentioned earlier that the Board of County Commissioners approved the waterfront setback changes, I did watch the meeting, and there was a lot of discussion there about pools and then the structures for pools, and they were talking about we might need to make additional modifications to include some of that language. Is that something we're going to be doing, or?
I expect so. I think that I haven't thought about a time frame for that. One of the commissioners did talk about why aren't we including pools, and when we allow the up to 15 feet on slabs and decks, and we did not include pools. We had a discussion here at this meeting that waterfront pools are almost always going to be enclosed because of screens, because of buds, etc. So it's not likely. The commissioner felt that we should consider pools again. So we probably will see that again, but I don't have a time frame for it at this time. Not ignoring that by any means. They had some other comments too. So when we do bring another ordinance back before them, and that will be in a few months probably, it would come here first, and I'll probably be talking about that again. Thank you.
Any other comments?
I just wanted to ask Mr. Dixon one question on something that he brought up, because it was a question that I'd been thinking about anyway, with the whole impact fee. The current rate of growth and the current impact fee schedule, is it sufficient?
Well, it's good for 5 years, so it's from the time it was adopted.
The fee schedule?
Well, the impact fee ordinance is good for 5 years, and the schedule.
I was
Yeah,
just
I think
wondering,
David's
like,
question is
like
there
the
enough money to do what you
the
want?
current rate of growth with what we're seeing and how it's growing exponentially, is the current fee schedule set enough, and is it gonna keep up, is my question.
The impact fee, the beauty of impact fees, and I know some people don't like them, is that it's pegged to growth. So the faster you grow, the more money you get. It's immediate. You don't have to wait for the property values to go up or anything like that. So impact fees is just a small part of it. I mean, the most that we've used impact fees for a new school is like under 10%. So we're not expecting to pay for a whole school with impact fees. But to answer your question in a bigger picture, there's lots that's beyond the county's control with respect to school funding. It's not like other forms of infrastructure. It's basically set by the state. So they tell us, how many students will fit in a school, and how much they're going to allocate for the county based on what part of the state it's in. So that's why you have school facilities in Dixie County that are comparable to school facilities that are in Stewart or Martin County, because your property tax base doesn't pay. Your local property tax base isn't what pays for a school. It's your state. It's allocated through the state based on student enrollment. And I think there's some problems at the state level that they're going to have to fix with how soon you can get the funding for a school. That's the biggest problem. Is I was telling somebody, I was telling you earlier that you have to wait if you're getting funding from the state for a new school until the school is like packed full of students. You can't even start the process of purchasing land usually until you have above 100% enrollment. And we already have land, so we're not really concerned about having to go out and acquire land. We know where the growth is. We've acquired land. We have like 80 acres in Citrus Springs. We have 20 acres in LeCanto. We have 40 acres in Crystal River. We even have a site in Sugar Mill Woods, down there, 20 acres. So, the people that preceded me did a good job in acquiring land, and I'm glad we didn't sell it, because a few years ago they were saying, we need to sell all this land and put it back on the tax rolls, but then we wouldn't have the land when we need it. So we have land. But, we need to find a way in the state of Florida to, other than a sales tax, and I know that's bad too, that people don't like the sales tax, but in my view, if a place is growing and you've got people coming there for tourism, you can capture revenue with sales tax that you wouldn't have otherwise. You have to use your general fund or your impact fee money for. Other places are getting the sales tax from us when we go there. When we go visit and we pay to stay in a hotel or buy food in a place, and then we pay that tax. So people that come here should pay us. And that's, my personal opinion is that's probably something we should be thinking about in the future. But other than that, I think we're in as good a shape as any other county I know of, as far as having the ability to get a project up and going. We got plans to add to Floral City in the next couple of years, which will allow us. We're going to have to rezone a bunch of students, which they're not used to in this county. They're not used to being moved, like the ripple effect all the way down from Hernando all the way down to Floral City, but we're going to have to do that, and we're going to have to, if we do have a lot of growth in the Central Ridge, we're going to have to look at the site that we have up there by the YMCA to be ready to figure out how we're going to come up with $50 million. That's the biggest problem, is we know where they're going to go. We just don't know how we're going to pay for them. We got impact fees are good, but they don't pay for a lot of a school. When you start looking at the whole picture, you have to have, the legislature wants the locals to come up with money, but they don't want to make it easy for them. They want to make it very difficult, if not impossible. So I don't know if they're gonna go to a system of special allocations where you have to, you know, show a need and then the legislature looks at it and you know, kinda like they've done with some other projects lately in this county. But, to answer your question,
That was a long answer.
yeah. I mean, it's not it's not a simple question.
Very informing.
No, very good.
Just a curiosity, how much funding would the county receive on new schools? 50%, 70%? You know, is there any type of breakdown as to what the state would reimburse us at?
Well, they don't reimburse you for it. You get a allocation in your annual, it's called capital outlay.
Yeah.
And, you know, each district within the state gets like 1.5% local tax for capital, which is what schools are paid for with.
Right.
The rest of it is for operations, for all the 2,500 and something employees we have in the buildings and the general operating costs. And then there's a lot of federal funds tied to schools.
Yep.
But to answer your question, no, we don't get an allocation for a school. We have to basically save the money over time and be ready to.
Really?
Yes.
Interesting. All right, thank you. Any other comments? Seeing none, motion to adjourn.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you all.